Welcome to the Infidel Podcast of the Damned, the weekly companion show of the Infidel News. Join us as we discuss this week's religious accounts from an atheist perspective. From Timbuktu to Toledo, from Kathmandu to Canada, from Bangalore to Bangladesh. We deplore, you deride. And here are your hosts, Dave and Nicole.
Hello and welcome to show number 33 of the Infidel Podcast of the Damned. I'm your host, atheist and author J. David Core, and with me is my co-host, Nicole Samard. The amazing... What?
I said don't forget.
The incomparable, what's the word you want me to use? I forget. Anyway.
Extraordinaire. And not only that, but then the guy who forgets to push the record button.
Yeah, this is our...
Aloof? Yeah. You could add aloof in there.
Aloof, yeah. Also joining us today is the host of the Flying Through Space podcast at flyingthroughspace.com, Rohit Mohindra. Welcome to the show, Rohit.
Thanks very much, guys. Happy to be here.
Today is Friday, September 18th, 2015, and we're going to be discussing the upcoming episodes of the Infidel News, which will run beginning Monday, September 21st, 2015. Today's newsreader is the Mudbrooker. Show notes for all of our podcasts can be found at infidelpodcast.blogspot.com. And unfortunately, today you're going to have to look at my static picture because we're having another glitchy problem with Skype, and Skype doesn't want to let me do video that way. So, or to tell the truth, I'm just sitting here naked because it's hot. Anyway,
the AC broke down, right?
The AC's broke, so I'm all. Yeah. I'm always letting it flop around, whatever. Okay, so yes, our guest today, Rohit Mohindra, is a Canadian who has a podcast called the Flying Through Space podcast.
Correct.
And we're going to give him a few minutes here to tell us all about his show. So tell us about your show, Rohit.
Thanks, Dave. So we'll start off with the name itself. It's called the Flying Through Space podcast, and the way I came about that name or its inception was. One night I was at home and didn't have much to do, so I got insanely high and decided to watch a documentary on the Hubble telescope. And I was just in such a state of awe that, mentally you understand something, but you kind of understand it on a surface level. But for some reason that night I was just in tune with what I was watching, and it just hit me on a deeper level and had the realization that... no matter what happens, how, static we think we are or grounded we think we are, we're literally on a giant piece of rock that is spinning on its own axis, and then around the sun, and then around the galaxy, and then around the universe. And so, it added some perspective that, no matter what we think, there's always a different element to it. And so that was sort of the physical aspect. Flying through space also applies to me anyways, mentally, which, I say about the podcast is to spread knowledge and ideas in an enlightening way. And so it's also to not be mentally grounded, to leave your comfort zone, to lift up norms and what you think might be true and venture out and explore. So it has some significance for me. And from what I've heard, a lot of my listeners on that level as well. So that's how the name came about. Topics that we discuss are very ranging. I mean, they range widely from anything to world news, to politics, to belief, to neuroscience, to astronomy, to drug laws, to, the prison system, animal rights. So, it's basically whatever I feel that is really interesting and doesn't get adequate coverage in the news or in the media, but really is at the forefront of what we're dealing with today as a society. I try to have honest and open discussions about things like this.
Very good.
Well, how do you find your guests? How do you find your guests?
Yeah, so I do a lot of reading online. I'll read. There's a number of journalists that I follow, but and a lot of media outlets, and a lot of bloggers as well. So anything that I'm reading online, if I'm sure you've had this. You stumble upon one article and then you end up down a rabbit hole 45 minutes later, like, holy shit, how did I end up on this article? So usually when that happens, if I'm drawn into something, I find a way to contact the whether it's the speaker or the author or whoever, and I'll reach out to them. And more often than not, they love to be on a podcast format like this. Usually they're just restricted to a very formal interview type question where, all the questions are pre-written. They're on a 5-minute or 10-minute segment space that they have. So they really don't get a chance to kind of, let their guard down and really be given a fair chance to explain their views or their ideas. So a lot of times they're more than willing to come on and have that discussion.
Mm-hmm. And so you, but you don't do your content, you don't do your show over Skype or anything like that. You do a one-on-one actual face-to-face.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, this is the first for me doing a Skype podcast. So, and I have to say, I love the format. But for mine, yeah, usually I have a studio, and so we make arrangements that whenever they're near Toronto, we find time to meet up, and they'll come to the studio and we'll record our podcast. And I like that for the most part because it's one-on-one. You get to see the person, and I think for them it feels more like a discussion. That guard of being recorded or having to filter what they say kind of melts away once the podcast gets started. But I must say, I love this format. I mean, there's going to be situations where you just can't get the person over here.
Mm-hmm.
They have no plans to travel, but you just want to know their thoughts and have that discussion. So I must say, I have to learn from you guys, and I may adapt this in the near future.
Yeah,
Don't learn from
some
me.
things from us.
Yeah, yeah. Already, I can say obviously the viewers won't know this, but there were some startup pains. So, yeah, I've made notes of that.
Yeah.
And what's the story of your show? Like, when did it start?
So it started about 3 years ago. But the conception or the inception of it was the seed got planted, I'd say, in my head probably around 5 years ago. I was on listening online to somebody else's podcast, and I was listening, and I had never heard anything like it. And it wasn't the typical radio that I was listening to. It wasn't filtered or censored, and there was swearing, and there was open dialogue. And I thought it was the most remarkable thing I ever heard. And even the subject matter that they were talking about how feelings and emotions just stem from the brain. And then the next topic was on the vastness of the universe. And the first time I ever heard the term quantum mechanics was on there, and I had no idea what it was. So I'm listening to this podcast. Meanwhile, I've got the computer up and I'm Googling quantum mechanics, and blows my mind the stuff that I'm reading. And at the time I was fairly young. I was in my early 20s, and so I went off to all my friends. I'm like, hey guys, you've got to look at this stuff called quantum mechanics. And you might imagine their first response was kind of like, what? It's not sports? No, we're not going to look into it. Yeah, and it was a few series of these things. It's like, hey, how do you guys feel about animal rights? How do you feel about CO2 emissions? And you sort of get the same narrative that, well, if it's not about, pop culture or sports, then I guess they just weren't interested. And I wasn't really finding that audience that I wanted to have that conversation with. And so then hearing this podcast kind of gave me the idea. And I said, well, if there's people if I exist, then there's got to be other people that are like me. So I sort of said, you know what, let me then venture, instead of trying to change the people around me forcing them to take interest in what I'm interested in, let me go out and venture and find people that, through the internet and through digital means that are interested in the same topics that I am. And let's see how other people exist, and let's get a dialogue going. So that seed started, happening about 5 years ago. And, I have a day job. I'm a robotic engineer, so that takes up a lot of time. So just the slow progression of getting to it, I'd say, I started having my first podcast about 3 years ago.
That's good. And right now it's not available through iTunes, but it's available through SoundCloud.
Yeah, so my podcasts are available on YouTube, where you can get the audio as well as the video. So I have video of myself and the guest, which is on my YouTube page, FTS Podcast, or you can just search Flying Through Space. I have a SoundCloud where you can you can stream it as well as download the MP3. And also everything is available through my website as well, flyingthroughspace.com. The one missing piece, like you mentioned, was iTunes. And previously I was hosting all my MP3s on the same hosting as my website. And it was on iTunes. I migrated over to SoundCloud, and for some reason I just can't get iTunes to sync up with SoundCloud. So once I overcome this hurdle, then it will be on iTunes. And for any of your listeners, if if you guys know how to do it, please drop me a line, let me know. So I've got it on SoundCloud, but the goal is to also have it on iTunes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as I had mentioned before, you can always host on Libsyn. That costs money though, or there are free hosting sites, but I can't remember any of them offhand. If anybody in the audience knows any, let us know. But there are they don't have the bells and whistles with the stats, but you don't need that anyway. So because you have your other sources to get the stats, and iTunes, like you said, is just an aggregator. It doesn't really host anything. So
yeah. And the reason why I migrated to SoundCloud was, the reach for SoundCloud is better. The people have now SoundCloud apps, and there's a lot of things on there. So availability is key, as well as ability to download. But they have a pricing system as well that if you want unlimited, you have to pay. So if I could find a good solution for linking the two, iTunes and SoundCloud, that would be amazing. If not, I'm gonna have to maybe do a double post, one on SoundCloud, one on Libsyn, and then link it.
Right. There's also Stitcher. I don't know if you're familiar with Stitcher, but once you're on Libsyn, you can get on Stitcher. Stitcher is like iTunes for Android.
Okay, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more popular for people. It's a pod grabber, the way iTunes does. It doesn't host anything, but it's for people that don't have Apple products.
Yeah.
And don't want to download.
Those people exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny enough. Yeah, actually, I can go one step further. So many times there'll be an app that I want, and I know you guys might roll your eyes and groan, but I still have a BlackBerry.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I got the latest one, the Z10, a number of years ago, and I thought, you know what? Everyone's jumping off BlackBerry. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And, to their credit, they had a great product, just no push or marketing behind it, but the product was good. So anyways, constantly I'm tweeting app developers saying, hey, are you going to come out with something for BlackBerry users? Although small, we do still exist. So, yeah. The world's not all iPhone.
Well, the next BlackBerry is going to be a BlackBerry with Android.
Yeah, I know that. Actually, it was a big step. I mean, to the content of BlackBerry users, we're allowed to use Android apps. Hooray! That's a way to keep the BlackBerry users. It's like, no, don't just go over to Android. Keep buying our phone. We'll just let you access other people's apps. Yeah. So
okay, I got another question. It's about your guests. How do you find your guests? And
he just told us that.
But the thing is, my memory. It's about how which ones are you going to have in the next couple of weeks or a month?
Yeah, my upcoming guest. So there's an alternative lifestyle magazine that just came. Started off in Montreal, and it's expanded to now Montreal, Toronto, and I think one or two other big Canadian cities. And the founder and the editor is actually based in Toronto. So we've been having a good conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed the articles that he posts. And mostly a lot of them have to do with social issues, social justice, as well as a lot of activism and protest, which I'm a big supporter of. And, a lot of the work that I do and stories that I talk about have to do with activism and protesting. And, basically, we all want a different world. We all want things to change, so I try and be that voice or that example to show that, all right, we have to make change happen. This is how we're going to happen. So I was actually at a protest and I saw their photographer there covering it when no other media outlet obviously was there, but they were covering it. So I got in touch with the photographer and we started having a good conversation, and it was just something I wanted to talk about. So they'll be on in a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. I've got some videographers that I've known previously from Indonesia, and they just travel the world making different types of documentaries and short films. So I'll have them coming up as well. And I have some few people in the science industry, I don't call it science field anyways, to come and talk about neuroscience and psychology and the advances of science as well. So please stay tuned. I'm setting all these up right now, so these should be out shortly.
Very good. So you're also, getting off the topic of the podcast for a moment. You are a fellow freethinker.
I am.
You're an atheist, but you were not raised in the Christian background. So your experience is probably going to be much different than Nicole's and mine, who both came from the Catholic his background. So tell us a little bit about how you, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you first?
31.
31. So how long have you been an atheist?
It's always a weird question, right? Because sometimes it's like, when are you an out of the closet atheist or even a self-realized atheist?
Right.
Because looking back now, I've pretty much been an atheist almost all my life, but I just didn't know the term. I didn't know anything of the sort existed.
Yeah,
and
exactly my experience.
And then you find it and you're like, well, I've actually been an atheist a long time, but I've been calling myself an atheist for probably about 2 years now. Prior to that, it was always doubts. But I'd say I was calling myself an atheist for about 2 years, but really, I don't want to say vocal, but unshy about it for about the last year, for about a year. Yeah. So I met Dave at a Center for Inquiry conference that happened not too long ago, and we started talking there, and it was a big conference, and there was a lot of keynote speakers, and one of them being Richard Dawkins. Which was a big deal. And the majority of the attendees base was from the US. And as I looked around, I noticed one thing, is that everybody there sort of fit the same demographic. Older to middle-aged, somewhat well-off, middle to upper class, a white person, person of non-color. Yeah.
Just say crackers.
Yeah. We weren't crackers. Well, you were crackers to my ancestors, I guess. But yeah. And so it was interesting when I saw, and I wondered why. I mean, I didn't fully understand. I mean, I had my reasons, obviously, but it was just surprising to me to see that. And I started getting a conversation with Nicole and a few of the other people there, and started talking about the backgrounds and, the experiences they had, and sort of what they were fighting against, sort of the ideas and practices that they were fighting against. And I had a very different perspective because I didn't grow up with the same experience or background or teachings that everybody else there did. So I felt like I had a unique experience. So me and Nicole started talking, and he told me about the podcast and even people at the organization. And I think it's very important that we start to get representation from people across all spectrums that share the same view, because it's a physio or a psychological thing. Everybody hates an outsider. It doesn't matter what the message is. As soon as somebody realizes you're an outsider, you're deducted points. And so a lot of what happens in the conference is, yes, free thinkers, they go after the Western religions like Christianity, Mormonism, Catholics. But they also go after a lot of the Eastern religions, and the Eastern religions that aren't going to be as open to listening to their message because already you're viewed as an outsider. Right. And I felt the importance or the need to have this logical thinking and this mindset from that other perspective.
What's your background?
Yeah, so I was raised Hindu. So my parents were born and raised in India, in New Delhi. They both migrated to Canada, to Toronto, in the 70s. So they've been in Canada for a while, and so I was born and raised in Toronto. But as part of my culture and my upbringing, I was raised Hindu. Yeah.
So I mean, I as a person who was raised, in the Christian faith, I kind of understand that there is a variety of ways people think about God through Christianity. There are people who think that God actually is an actual entity and that Christ was actually his son, the literal thing. There's also people that take a more figurative view of it. Hinduism, to me, almost seems like, and as I'm talking as an outsider here, but it almost seems to me like you can't possibly take it literally. Are there people who take it literally?
Vast majority of the people take it literally. And yeah, it's surprising, but they do. And it's not a story for them. And maybe on some level, they'll think it's, metaphors, or I would say the more progressive people, obviously. But if you go to parts of India, and I know, from family and friends back in India, it is fact. It is really what happened, and it's taught that way, and things are starting to change. But if you go to a lot of parts, and even in here, even in my parents' generation, I mean, my mom and I constantly have this I don't want to say discussion because she's my mom, and no matter what, I'm not going to argue with her. But you can see it in her eyes that this is something that she believes wholeheartedly. Now, lucky for me, and I would say the rest of the world, that it's a very passive relationship. I mean, sorry, belief. Or religion. So I think it's Sam Harris, but it might be Dawkins, but it might be Sam Harris, who has this this religion scale, so to speak. It's like the really aggressive ones, and then on the other end you get those complete passive ones. So Hinduism is somewhat passive, so it's not really shone in the limelight as much. But if you're asking, is it believed literally? It really is.
So they actually think there's a blue monkey god and an elephant god.
Yeah, they do, and it's very similar to why we think that. Well, the Western people think that about their god as well. The thing with Hinduism is that it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, religion. So much of that country is founded on Hinduism. And you also have this thing too, where the U.S. and Canada is a nation of immigrants. A lot of the people come with different views and different backgrounds. So you get this assimilation that if you might not know in detail other religions, but that there are other religions and things. A place like India, where 98% of the people there are going to be of one religion, of one skin color, of one upbringing. It helps to, I don't want to say reinforce, but it that's sort of what what you grow up in. So no matter where you go, you're going to see the same pictures of the same deities. You're going to hear the same worship songs. They've got the same layout of the temples everywhere. It's taught in schools, and a lot of what the culture, the food, the festivals, the celebrations were all founded from the religion. And so in the West, I feel like there's an easier time sometimes to distinguish religion sort of from the culture. You can have a religion, but you can also have your a bit of a culture and celebrations. With places like Pakistan or India or in the East, they're intertwined so much. Religion is the culture. All the festivities are part of the religion. So there is this belief, and a lot of good. There's amazing things that stem out of the East, and a lot of where it comes from was religion. And so you have principles that are amazing. Things like the spices that came out of India, turmeric. Now turmeric is being called a great spice because of its health properties. And no doubt, let's just say it does have amazing health benefits, There's mention of turmeric and its healing properties in religious text. Or you take yoga, for example. We know the benefits of, yoga from an exercise point of view, a breathing point of view, a stress relieving point of view. I mean, stress relief, physical activity, exercise, this is nothing that belongs to religion or spirituality. It's just common sense and science. But yoga provides that in a way where you're not breaking your knees or your shin caps or playing hockey or something. So now the world is starting to come to the benefits of yoga. But yoga was also mentioned in religious texts. And so now you have this connection where it's like, look at all the good that these Eastern countries and cultures are providing, and that stuff stemmed from the ancient text. So therefore, the people that wrote the ancient texts were so ahead of their time and so in tune that everything that they wrote had to have been true.
Right, and you can point out to them that that the Muslims say the same thing about the Quran, and the Christians say the same thing about the Bible. That there's always that there's evidence, and nobody cares. Like I know Christians don't care that the Quran can be used to validate science, or that the Vedas can be used to validate yoga. They don't care. The Christians just ignore that. But it says in the Bible, God hung that the earth is a sphere, so therefore God knew.
Yeah, and we need to objectively understand that sure there were smart people back then. It's no question, and they could have came up with discoveries that through time we just kind of pushed in the background when the forefront of science came back, and now we're sort of rediscovering those things, and those things should be acknowledged. But we also have to be able to say not everything that came from the same source then has equal weighting or should all be considered true. And so then I try and provide that voice that says, this is sort of the perspective that's given, and this is sort of the fight or the challenge that we're provided.
I was reading about Hinduism not too long ago, and what it said, and you'll have to tell me if it's correct or not, at least that's how I understood it. It said that there was one deity that is embodied into different deities depending on circumstances. Is that the way it works?
The thing is, and like, if no matter what I say, I guarantee in your comment post there's going to be people that I think they're more educated than me, and they're just going to go on and say you're reading the wrong thing. You're reading the wrong thing. The thing that and I'll answer your question just in a different way, is that the religion is so old, and that there's so many different things that can happen. People, every god is sort of a reincarnation of another god, and so sometimes you can easily lose, well, at what timeline was this god there, and who reincarnated into who, and what was controlling who, right? And they say, I think, cows are worshipped. I think everybody kind of knows, and that's the butt of many jokes, is that Hindus worship the cow, and that there's like 1,000 different deities that reside inside a cow. And so whereas, Christianity has the one figure, which is Jesus. Yeah, Hindus have many. I mean, there's literally hundreds of deities that are there, and there's dozens that we pray to. And you can go to any temple that will have a number of ones. Pardon?
There's local ones too, right?
There's local. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like, to say the U.S. is all the same. I mean, you can have one guy from New York, born and raised in New York, talk to somebody who was born and raised from Georgia, and they'll almost seem like they're speaking different languages. Even though it's the same language. India is like that, but just, 10 times the magnitude. So it's so big, it's so diverse that you can go to a different province, and the language, the food, the culture is so different. So their interpretation, what they've been taught along the way, changes so much. So, it's crazy. In the North, the person, so I'll give it as the equivalent, but the person in the North that's revered as the god, and the person that's worshipped as the god and opposite as the devil. In the South, it's actually flipped, and so you have a worshiping of the devil. But except, of course, in the South, they don't see it as the devil. It's to them that's their god in the good way. So I don't want people to think that in the South they're devil worshippers. To them they look at the positive qualities, and they're good people as well. But it just shows you how diverse the message is across the whole region. That,
are you talking about Krishna and Vishnu there?
I'm talking about and people are going to give me Rama, yeah. So Rama in the North is predicted as very he's very dark skinned and not really worshipped, and kind of he was that evil that the good was fighting. Raman, sorry, it's Raman, and in the South, they sort of have a celebration. And so it's very different, but it's all accepted, and people understand that, no, it's a different view when you go to the South. But so I growing up, I was brought up into the Hindu religion. I attended all the ceremonies. I went to temple, and like any young kid, I would sit there and just daydream about other stuff. But I was taken there, and it's funny enough. I guess I've always been of the mindset that I've always been the questioning type. And not in a negative or a rebellious sort of way, but in a very curious kind of way. I find questions fascinating. There's literally, you could ask a question about anything. Like, there's an infinite number of questions, and for every question, there is an answer. But what's intriguing is whether we will ever know that answer, and whether that answer is ever even knowable. Mm-hmm. But regardless, there's always a question that can be answered. So I've always questioned things, and I remember one of the first questions that I had that led me down this path, I was in elementary school. I probably no more than grade 4 or 5. And I would say my atheism led me to questions about food, believe it or not. Yeah. So Hindus, as per the religion, can't eat beef. Okay. Right. We don't eat beef because we worship and idolize the cow. We consider it a god. And I could talk about that later on, but we worship the cow. Muslims, on the other hand, don't eat pork. So not that they don't worship it, but they don't eat pork. But they can eat beef. Right. But Hindus can't eat beef, but we can eat pork. So growing up and knowing or being taught this pretense of Hindus not being able to eat beef, so I couldn't eat beef, you can sort of imagine growing up in the school system, kids' friends' birthday parties, summers, whatever it is, going out to restaurants. I could never eat a hamburger. growing up, and just let that sit in for a minute. I mean, how part of hamburgers is our society? Right.
Yeah, in the West it is.
In the West, yeah. And so all my experiences in the West because I was born here, but so how much relies on the hamburger and even the hot dog? You going to a baseball game, getting a ballpark frank, or whatever it is, and you have spaghetti, there's meatballs. You have meatloaf, there's beef. No matter what, you're getting something with beef. And
I'm a little bit confused about that because until recently, in India they had abattoirs, and a few of them have been shut down because of the religious beliefs. But they had abattoirs where they actually slaughtered cows, and when they passed the law that said you couldn't slaughter cows anymore, the Muslims actually said, well, what if we import different cows because they're a different breed, and the cows that we eat in the West are not the same cows that they have in India. It's not the same type of cow. So isn't there like a loophole there?
There's always going to be a loophole, especially when there's business and money involved.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to appeal and appease to a different demographic. So if there's a complete ban of all beef whatsoever in India, to slaughter it or even to import it, you're going to be alienating a decent sized population of Muslims, Catholics, and Christians that also live in India. Right. And so, you're going to tread a bit of a balance. And so what do? You come up with this, this loophole that says, okay, we'll have a different type of cow, or we'll import them so we don't do the slaughtering here.
Right.
But regardless, the beef is not to be eaten in the Hindu religion. So I grew up not being able to eat beef, but all my Muslim friends could eat beef no matter what, but they just couldn't eat pork. But I could eat pork, but I didn't want pork. I mean, there's only so much. I couldn't even put bacon on a hamburger. What am I going to do? I could eat bacon, but I couldn't put it on a hamburger. And so the wheels started turning. I thought it was so unfair because beef was so much more prevalent than pork, right? I thought it was so unfair that Muslims could eat beef, but they just couldn't eat pork. And I was like, I don't like that trade-off. And I'm like, well, how does God know? Does he have different rules for different religions? So if you're Hindu, you have to follow these rules, but if you're Muslim, you have to follow these rules. And then I said, that doesn't seem fair because they have the easier time. There's more stuff in with beef. And then I said, well, what if I converted? What if I switched religions and said, now I'm Muslim? Would all of a sudden God switch me over to the Muslim column, and now everything that they were allowed to do, I was allowed to do? And then what about Catholics and Christians? They could eat anything they wanted. So my white friends never had to worry about whether they were allowed to eat beef or allowed to eat hot dog, whatever they wanted to eat, they could eat. And I just found it so frustrating that why is it because of the color of my skin? Now whenever I have to go to someone's house or a party, I got to be the one to tell the person's mom, sorry, I'm not allowed to eat beef because I'm brown or Hindu or something. And it's kind of like, well, thanks parents. Not only am I the standout colored kid, but now I have unique requirements that you must now all cater to because of some belief that even I don't understand. And so the parents would ask me, why can't you eat beef? I'm Hindu. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm just not allowed. And so, it's just these wheels of turning. And so like anything at that age, you just go, okay, it is what it is. You push that thought off. You go, okay, whatever. I guess somehow God knows. I mean, isn't that what you say? You go, I can't explain it, but God knows. And at that age, your parents obviously have all the answers. So you just accept whatever they say. I mean, they're your parents. They must know. They're adults. You're just a dumb kid. So you go, okay, I'll accept it. And so going through life, I just accepted that, all right, as long as I just don't eat beef, somehow I'll stay on God's good books and I won't have this issue. Going through life, man, I just kept questioning more and more. And just the more the questions piled up, the more the answers just seemed so finicky. Then I just sort of said religion was just a passive thing. And then I just sort of just culturally identified as a Hindu. And then once, a few years ago when, I stumbled upon Hitchens and Dawkins and all these things, I was like, where have you been all my life? This is the voice of reason that I longed for as a child to answer these questions, and I couldn't get, And I'll give it up. I did my due diligence, and I really tried to be religious. I mean, as a teenager, you can all relate. You go through hardships, right? That teenage awkward phase that everybody goes through. And I said, all right, no, the world doesn't understand me. I'm unique and I'm, no one gets me. And so maybe religion is the key. And so I did this hard dive where, I bought the Bhagavad Gita and I listened to the songs and the prayers and I prayed every night and I tried to feel this connection. So I really gave it. And that cliche thing where they say, first you have to believe and then it becomes true. So I'm like, all right. And so I'm like, all right, maybe that's the key then. All right. Religion's such a big industry. Everybody can't be wrong. Let me get into this. And so I tried. And maybe for a little bit I was tricking myself as being happy. But the one thing that, always remained were the questions. And the questions just never got answered. But then getting into science and critical thinking and logical reasoning, I realized that there are so many better explanations to what I was trying to substitute with the answer for God. And then I discovered the answer, the most amazing answer that, I've ever stumbled upon, which is simply, I don't know, or we don't know. Mm-hmm. And for once, that was an acceptable answer. You could say, we really don't know how the universe started. Whereas religion always tried to fill in that answer and try to, make you at peace. And like for me, it was never about the answer. It was always about the questions. And this dive into science and really provided that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, that was very, very interesting conversation, and I wish it could go on longer, but we're running. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and start with our news stories now.
Sure.
The first story.
In Canada, the Calgary Pride Week ended on September 7th. Prior to that, one of the city's bus drivers, Jesse Rao, said he would quit his job if he was forced to drive one of the buses assigned to the event and decorated in rainbow colors. What was his excuse? He explained that as a Christian, he could not support homosexuality. It seems that the man didn't make his threat lightly. He said, "I have a family to support and I'm very concerned about losing the job. But when it goes against the most important things that I stand for, or if I'm asked to compromise in such a big way for what I believe to be right, then I have to lose my job." According to Rao's pastor, Arthur Pawlowski, the bus company instructed the driver to keep quiet about the matter, and presumably he did just that rather than lose his job. There has since been no further development of the controversy.
Now, see, that's exactly the way to handle that kind of thing. I mean, he's a complete ass for not wanting to drive gay people, but that's beside the point. The fact that he has a religious issue with it and he's willing to lose his job rather than there's a new meme going around. I don't know if you guys have seen it. And you guys in Canada know about the Kim Davis thing with the gay marriage.
Yeah, definitely.
And so there's this meme going around where they keep showing different people. And today I saw one with Barack Obama. It said, "Wasn't even born in this country, still does his fucking job." So
yeah.
But if you can't do the job, quit the job. That's and he did. That's what he wanted to do.
Except that there's going to be let's put it this way. The guy, I don't trust him. He's slimy. For example, here's what happened as far as I understand. The city decided that for a gay pride, they were going to have a gay pride bus. Nobody said, "Okay, do you want to drive it?" It was no. He just said, raised his hand immediately before anybody could talk to him or to anybody. He just said, "Me, I'm not going to drive that bus because it's against my. I hate those guys. It's against my religion, and I'm going to quit if you like what what the f." That's the point.
The fact
why jump so fast?
Well, I think that's because, he felt an anger inside almost. There was a deep resentment that, as soon as it was mentioned that this parade was going to go and that a bus was going to be provided, he felt something like some deep hatred inside, and nobody even asked, but he just felt like he had to let the world know, I'm not for this. I'm not for this. And I think subtly he's kind of saying none of you people should be for this, but I'll be the champion to step up and voice my displeasure so you can all
I won't drive that bus.
Supposedly jump on my jump on.
I won't drive that bus. Who's with me?
That's exactly what I think it is, and it's sad because to come to that level where you're risking your livelihood for your family, that's a deep-seated disbelief and indoctrination. Mm-hmm. I mean, you almost feel like what a shitty life.
Yeah, there's another story that's going around about a stewardess, a Muslim
flight
stewardess.
Attendant,
that's getting all kind of press, and she also, I know that we had a guest on recently who was very opposed to making special accommodations for people's religious beliefs. He's like,
Yeah.
you can't, he was just like, if you need accommodations, just quit the job, just get out of there. But if they can make accommodations for somebody, they can make, why not make accommodations for somebody? And apparently that's what the airline was doing, was they were making accommodations for her until somebody complained, hey, I'm doing her work for her. And then the airline said, we can't let that go on anymore. You have to either do the job or quit. I'm of two minds on that one. For one, I think she was exactly right to say, I can't do this anymore. Can you make other accommodations? I think the airline was exactly right to say, well, we'll try to make other accommodations for you. And I think the stewardess who was opposed to it, saying, I don't want to do her work for her, let her do her own damn work, was also right. Everybody was right. All three of them were right. So,
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to add those three components, you're going to get that situation. And you're right. I think, see, for me, religious accommodation, I hate when people use the word religious. If you need some type of accommodation because of whatever reason, even if it's a belief, if you're going to extend it to religious accommodation, you have to extend it to any belief that somebody holds strongly. And
Right.
so if a flight attendant says, hey, I'm perfect for this job, but I still think that aliens are reading my brainwaves, therefore I must always wear a tinfoil hat, and he truly believes this, that is no different. That's a deep-seated belief, no different than something of the religious nature. The belief is different, but the deep-seated and the rigor that they hold on to it is the same. And so, you come across so many things that have people need accommodation for because of certain things. If you're going to extend it because of religion, you got to extend it across the board. And as you said, Dave, I think each party was right in going that way. It's just going to happen. But yeah, the onus should really be on the flight attendant to be like, hey, if I've made this change, serving alcohol is definitely part of the job requirement. Perhaps I should be upgrading my skills or looking at something else to not put myself in that situation, because they should have some empathy too and be like, I can't, it's not all about me, accommodate me. Hey, I may be putting my coworkers and my employer through something that they want. Is there anything that I can do to make it easier for them, which may be change roles?
Right.
Well, would she apply for a job at a bar? She wouldn't apply for a job at a bar. So
exactly.
It's the same
Well,
thing
she
for
did
the
have,
airline.
actually, in her case, she may have, because in her case, what actually happened was she took the job and she was perfectly willing to serve alcohol, and she served alcohol for a while until her imam told her that's wrong too, and she said, "Oh, then I can't do this anymore." So she could very well have applied for a job at a bar and then gone to the bartender and said, "I can't serve alcohol anymore. What can you do for me?" And there's no, in that situation, there's nothing they can do for you. That's the job. That is the job.
Yeah. And that's the free market, right? You're free to keep a job. You're free to leave. You try and work it out with your employer. I mean, we have stricter laws in Canada and in some parts of the States where, employer has to show reasonable attempt to retrain you or put you in a different role before letting you go. They could have done the same thing with this person, right? Because their qualifications were different when they started the job. Now their qualifications are now different because of whatever reason. You might have to change roles, and if that's the case, then so be it. That's how it is. That's the free market.
They make stewardesses into ticket takers all the time, so that really shouldn't be a problem for them.
Yeah,
but
I think it's just, and I think, and this is why I started the podcast, and you guys do as well. Is you leave it up to mainstream media, and what are they going to do? They're going to try to sell headlines, and they say Muslim woman, denied or reprimanded by airline company because, and yada yada yada. And all of a sudden, it's a war. But we can sympathize for the lady. We can sympathize for the airline and the other flight attendant. We don't have to get uptight and angry about somebody, but we can be like, yeah, it's a shitty situation. There's better ways to handle it. And yeah, that's my take on it.
Well, to go back to the bus driver, I will ask any listener and you guys to come back in 2 weeks, because there's more to come on the topic. Because there's more to what we've heard.
Okay. Let's go on to the next story.
Okay.
35-year-old Medhat Ishaq is a Coptic Christian living in Egypt. On October 6, 2014, he was in possession of 9 Arab-language Bibles while in the Mall of Arabia in Cairo when he saw a young man who he approached to offer over a copy, saying the man should take it to better know God. According to an account agreed to by both parties, the unnamed young man told Ishaq that he was a Muslim and did not read the Christian Bible. So Ishaq apologized and left the mall. Having witnessed the exchange, mall security reported to the authorities that a man was evangelizing at the mall, and Ishaq was subsequently arrested on August 7th. and charged with inciting sectarian strife and harming national security, despite the fact that proselytizing is not technically illegal under Egyptian law. Ishaq was sentenced to 15 days in jail on the initial charges. However, on the 14th day, the judge added a new charge of blasphemy, and they ordered that the man be held for an additional 2 weeks.
Now, yeah, this is the kind of thing that Christians live for.
Yeah.
This kind of martyrdom, this victimization. I'm sure, knew that even though it's legal for him to do what he was doing, there was a chance that he was going to get in trouble for it, and didn't care, and actually was probably hoping that it would happen.
It's the martyr thing.
Yeah, same. I mean, to spread the message, to do what it takes, to be looked at as the hero. I mean, same people that, kind of go into North Korea with the idea of, spreading religion or what else. I agree. They looked at as the martyr. Maybe he knew he was going to get, coverage, or this would blow up, but you knew what was coming. And I like, Dave, how you assessed the article or the story and went, he knew what he was doing, but you didn't jump on the country. You didn't say, oh, backward Egypt and how dare you and blah, blah, blah. Because we know Egypt isn't free. Like,
right.
That's the given. There's no point on harping on Egypt. That was the given. You harp on the person that says, what are you doing? This is problematic,
Yeah.
right? Use, if you want to do that, you got to be smart about it. Use ways outside of the country, do a YouTube channel or something.
Right.
Don't go out and do this. We know countries like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, this is what's going on there. There's nothing new. Is it terrible? Yes. But that's the state that they're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I, Christians a lot of times say, well, they're coming over to our country and, they get to say what they want and we're not allowed to say anything bad or persecute them. But then when we go over there, look what they do to us. Well, it's like, yeah, but there's a reason they're leaving their shithole and coming over here.
Yeah.
Nobody leaves.
Yep.
Nobody leaves the U.S. and Canada to seek refuge status in Syria. Mm-hmm. Nobody does that. It doesn't fucking happen. The reason they're leaving Syria and going to Germany and these places, because there's a better system there. That's why these countries are world renowned. That's why they're, top countries leading the developed nations. Yeah. So don't shithole on the other ones.
Yeah. On that line of thought, he's in a position to be like, he could be a Rosa Parks, but instead, or a Gandhi, but instead he's being a self-glorified martyr. He's like, because Rosa Parks, Gandhi, when they did what they did, they knew that there could be consequences. They accepted that there was going to be consequences, and the world saw the consequences as the issue. Yeah. The way that he's going about it, and the way that a lot of other Christians go about it, when they go in and they proselytize, and then they're like shocked that they were arrested, they're not doing that. They don't have that. Their message is lost in the fact that they're a victim.
Yeah. Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And the worst thing you're going to do then is if already, the country's already under, religious rule. What are you going to do? Go in and then talk about another religion, right? That's like going into North Korea or Syria and talking about democracy, or China and talking about, true democracy. Obviously, you wouldn't do that. So why would you go into a religiously ruled country and talk about, secularism or another religion? It's not. Yeah, I mean, we know the problem, but you're not helping.
And you're talking to the Americans, who are, not talking about you, Dave, who, who it seems they want to live in a theocracy. Well, you want to live in a theocracy? Move over to Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Until something happens that they're opposed to theocratically, which is the whole issue with theocracy. Whenever somebody's like talking about, well, we need to live by biblical standards or whatever, blah blah blah. Well, whose biblical standards? Which version of the Ten Commandments do we want to put up? It's like they don't.
And you guys already tried. They already tried that, and look what's is happening in the Middle East, right? I mean, it's no hidden fact that most Muslims die at the hands of other Muslims. And so there you go. It's religiously ruled, and they're fleeing because obviously there's no peace in that area, and so they're coming to another world because it's been structured in such a way that I don't want to say encouraged, but it does allow for free thought and free expression. So if you're going to come because of a developed nation, because you like what that developed nation has to offer, you have to then accept the things that made it a developed nation.
Exactly.
All right.
Well,
And I just want to point out too that, you know, because of the whole Syrian thing that's happening right now, you know, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of hate on the internet for migrants and refugee seekers and stuff. You got to realize too that, you know, there's a war zone there. So people that are literally picking up their lives and moving, they're not no good bums. To make that voyage across the ocean and to make that voyage through multiple countries takes a certain amount of intelligence and dedication and care for one's family and courage. And the fact that they're choosing your countries or other countries as the place called home should almost be encouraging. Like you should take it as a sign of pride that they're choosing to come here. I understand the fear, and the fear is always there. And obviously, there's infrastructure, and you don't want to, change your beliefs. But instead of hating them completely, try taking the aspect of there's a certain amount of like, man, we live in a great place that people that are war torn are looking at our nation as a place to call home. Nobody's looking at their place to go home. The fuck if I'm ever gonna go there.
Hungary put up a wall this week.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing about that is those people want to get into Hungary so bad that they're redirecting their route and they're going through 3 other countries to get into Hungary.
I know. And so, you got to think, if these were, if they, I'm sure, let's give the benefit of the doubt and say a very small minority population of them may be terrorists, but the vast majority are not going to jump through these hoops to go. They're the ones that genuinely want a better life for them and their family and will not stop until they do it. And it's almost, we talk about, American bravery or Canadian bravery and, and what our troops go through. And we should see it almost as no different that people are risking their life for the betterment of their future descendants and their families. It's almost like, wow, I can't believe what you guys did to get here. But once you guys get here, here's a blanket, here's some coffee. You can't stay here permanently, but we can find you a better situation. In the meantime, we got to figure out, because obviously everybody from these war-torn countries can't keep coming. So obviously there's short-term goals and long-term goals, but that was just my 2 cents.
Well, personally, I blame the entire Western world for what's happening right now. And here's my illogic for this. For the longest time, like after the Second World War, leftist political parties in the Middle East were taking over. Now there was the East versus West battle. There was and everybody hated on the Western side. Everybody hated the communists, and you had all those socialist type political parties who were taking over in the Middle East. And so what happened is the Western governments pushed and helped the religious organizations, the Muslim Brotherhood and all those organizations. They helped them. And the best example of help is Iran and Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan went, helped, armed, sold them arms, got all the benefits he wanted, and then, it all exploded in their face. This is just one example to illustrate the way I look at it, as in the West is responsible. It's the West that built up the religious fanatics because for the longest time they thought that religious fanatics were better than socialists.
Yeah. And the socialists would have been much better.
I think that's a really good topic. I would love to come back and we could have a discussion on that because I have viewpoints as well. I agree with what you're saying, but I think it warrants a separate discussion as well.
Yeah,
it's a big topic.
Let's go on and do the third story.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Catholic priest runs away. On April 15th, a 15-year-old boy went to use the bathroom where the priests and altar servants prepared for Mass in St. Francis Catholic Church in Sherwood, Oregon. In the bathroom, he noticed that an electrical outlet was affixed to the wall of the bathroom, and he deemed this a strange place to affix an electrical outlet. He removed it and reported it to the priest, Father Israel Bayan, and was then discovered that what looked like an electrical outlet was in fact a disguised camera. A couple of days later, the boy's mother contacted the priest to see whether the police wanted to talk to her son, but was told that wouldn't be necessary. A couple of weeks later, the boy's father contacted the priest and discovered that not only was there not an update from the police concerning the incident, but the priest had failed to notify the church's deacon. This information was only discovered after Father Behan went on to falsify the police reports via a Facebook message. After the boy's father set a meeting with the priest and the deacon, Behan eventually came clean about not reporting the incident to the police because he had misplaced the camera and was afraid of the consequences that would follow from that. It was later agreed that the incident would be reported to the police. The Archdiocese of Portland reported that Father Behan was placed on administrative leave on June 24th, and the police investigating the incident now believe that the priest was either responsible for the camera or aided and abetted whoever was, and have released a warrant for his arrest. However, it has since been reported that Father Behan traveled to the Philippines to visit family and is not known when he will be returning back to Oregon. For now, it seems as though he has no intention of coming back.
Okay, the reason that I picked this story to be one of the stories that we're running this week is that this is not the only story this week about pedophile priests. There's actually, I think, were there 2 or 3 stories in this week's upcoming episodes? There's at least
one
2.
is the pedophile, there's another pedophile, and there's one who he's just, I guess, sexually, he's got a bad case of blue balls and took it on
That's what
somebody.
It was. Yeah. So not to harp on, the issue, but this isn't over. This is an ongoing thing. The Catholics tend to pretend that this is a thing of the past, and it is absolutely not. It's an ongoing thing. Although, what's his name? The one guy whose story we were following for 2 years died last week too. The cardinal, was it cardinal?
Yes, he was a cardinal. He was a cardinal, I believe. Yes, he had a big post. For the Catholic Church. He was representing Rome. I think it was in the Philippines or something like that.
Yeah, and then he was hiding out in the Vatican for a while. And, when the new Pope finally decided to maybe hand him over to authorities, and he ended up just dying before anything could happen to him. But anyway, the point is, this is the kind of thing that a lot of people look at as outsiders. People look at the Catholics and they think, how can you continue to be in an organization that allows this to happen? And the thing is, when you're inside an organization like Catholicism, like Hinduism, like anything, like we were talking earlier, when you're inside it, you don't really think about it critically. You can't think about it critically. So it's not like, you joined a club and you found out that the club was giving money to the Nazis, so you quit the club. It's your church. And for a lot of people, it's really hard. For those of us who were raised religious and had a hard time actually admitting that we were atheist, imagine how hard it is for people who don't admit that aren't atheists and don't actually think the way atheists think, and this is their religion, and these things are happening. They have to rationalize this away so hard to make it work for them to be able to maintain their Catholicism or whatever, in this case it's Catholicism, but it could be anything.
Yeah, you have your whole life built around this organization and the people that go to this organization, right? So, I mean, you're going to see the same faces at the churches and all the events, and they may be your neighbors, and, you have this circle of friends that are all in this, and all of a sudden, if a scandal of an organization of the same name, several states away from you happens, you're not going to make the connection to see that you have a hand in the bigger picture of this thing. You're just going to think of it as that's their problem. And what are you going to do? Say, bye to your Sunday ritual and all the routines that you've made around the church because of these scandals? You're going to rationalize it. You're going to continue to live a happy life and do all the things that you want to do in your routine, and you just ignore it. You feel bad for the kid. You hate the priest for doing it, but you're like, it was somebody else's responsibility because I didn't hire the priest. I don't have any say in who gets in or what the criteria is. They should really, do a better job.
This is an isolated incident.
There's an isolated incident. They should do a better job. What does that have to do with me?
Right.
Well, and so there's no connection. They see it as no connection.
I'm going to do a bit of self-promotion again. If somebody is interested, there's going to be a similar story regarding the Catholic Church that's going to be mentioned in the upcoming presentation. yesterday on Wednesday night, I was over at the Toronto Centre for Inquiry office, where a woman was presenting her book, and she read from the book, and there's something about the Catholic Church in Nova Scotia, and it's not pretty. But actually, it's got a good ending to the story, and if you want to know more, you'll have to watch my episode, because I'm not giving it away.
Yeah, well, we're coming up on an hour, so let's go ahead and do the Christian glitches.
Okay, and this is going to be an unusual Christian glitches because you've got some of my input in there.
Oh, yeah.
So please challenge your professors.
Sure, Kent. Anything you say, Kent.
Here's what you do. If you're a student, you go to university someplace.
Does Patriot Bible University count?
Ask your professors face-to-face or in writing, Professor Jones, you've been teaching evolution in this class that I'm taking of yours. You obviously believe this. Would you be willing to debate Kent Hovind?
I was just joking about Patriot Bible University. Everybody knows it's not a real university. I just made that up. But don't worry, I'm going to go and challenge my professors for you.
He will come in at his expense and debate you in front of the university. We'll get, lecture hall ABC, whatever it is, and we will have a debate.
I don't think they'll want to. My professors say you are deceitful and a liar.
And the professor will say no. I promise you, they will say no.
Well, they do say that you are deceitful and a liar, so I guess they will say no.
Okay. They'll have 20 different reasons, but they will say no. Okay.
Then why do you want me to do this, Kent?
There's no evidence for creation, or he doesn't have real credentials, or, I can list the evidences for you.
Well, I guess they'll just tell me what they've always said, that you are a deceitful liar.
The point is, they said no. Okay. Then say thank you and write the name down.
And then I mail you his name? Because I don't want to do anything deceitful.
Then go to the next one, and do that with all the professors in the university that deal with anything related to evolution.
And then I'll mail my list to you, and then you'll sue all those teachers for calling you a deceitful liar, right?
When you're done doing that, now students, listen carefully. This is simple and classic.
Classic? I guess that means you've done it before.
Okay. When you're done getting this list of professors, somebody did this at Berkeley, had 160 professors on there, refused to debate.
Wow, that's a lot of professors. Do they have that many at Patriot Bible University?
Get your list. Then go ahead and get a lecture hall that you can use. Get a club on campus, like the ping pong club or something. Any club on campus can usually get a room for free for use for something.
Is it because you'd like me to start a Christian ping pong club?
So get your club, the chess club or something, and say, okay, can we have lecture hall A, Wednesday night for 3 hours?
You're confusing me now. Do you want me to start a Christian ping pong club or a Christian chess club? Just don't ask me to lie. I don't like liars.
And they'll say, what's it for?
And I tell them the truth. It's to start a new chess club or ping pong club or whatever you say, I'll do it.
Or we're going to have a big panel discussion on ping pong ball.
Ping pong balls? You want me to organize a discussion about ping pong balls? Like, why would I want to do that? You're not asking me to lie, are you?
Oh, okay.
Good, as long as you don't ask me to lie or deceive them.
Whatever you're going to do. Then schedule me to come in. I'll come in, I'll pay my expenses, and I'll simply teach on creation.
Hey, wait a minute. Were you asking me to lie when you mentioned the ping pong conference?
But then you run ads all over the campus. Come hear Kent Hovind speak on creation. The following professors refuse to debate him, and list their names. I mean, put it all out there for the whole world to see. It's hilarious.
It's hilarious? Oh, well, if it's hilarious, I guess I'll do it. But as long as it doesn't involve any treachery or lies. He's joking at the end.
Yeah.
Choking on those ping pong balls.
Yeah. So, yeah, Kent Hovind has debated people in the past, and his debates are farces. Yeah. And so nobody wants to debate him anymore, but it's because he's so smart. is why they don't want to debate him. They're afraid of him. Well, whatever.
Or it's because real university professors have real work to do, and
Yeah.
real research, and real papers, and real science. And
Yeah.
it's
We did a story on that Berkeley thing, didn't we?
I don't remember,
Did
but
he-
I know one thing. He went to court. He says he's not a liar, and what's he doing? He's trying to get people to lie for him.
Yeah. Don't tell him that I'm coming until I show up.
Yeah.
Except for the people that you're putting up signs and saying, "Come listen to Kent Hovind lecture on." It's going to be a stacked audience that way anyway. He's just silly. Kent Hovind is silly.
Is he just like I know Ken Ham.
He's
Oh,
the
yeah.
same kind of thing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. People have made that argument too. It's like, why even give somebody like this even a platform? It just, the last thing you want to do is legitimize their opinion to show that it's on equal ground with yours, and that's like saying, let's have a debate between creationism and, a chicken farted the universe.
Right.
Let's debate those two. It doesn't merit any discussion.
Although recently there was a big controversy when Bill Nye debated. Who did he debate?
Ken Ham. That's what I was saying.
Yeah. And I was in favor of that debate. I'm glad that debate happened because you knew that you weren't going to convince his people, but you're not trying to convince his people. They're not convincible. What you're trying to do is you're trying to take anybody who's on the fence and you're trying to show them these are the flaws in this guy's argument. So maybe help them over the fence, because we've all been on the fence at one point or another. If we were raised in religion, there's atheists out there who weren't raised in religion. They were raised by atheist parents, and so they don't really. I don't think they understand this. But if you were raised religiously, there was a time when you were on the fence, when you could have gone either way. And for me, it was when I was 9, but for some people, it's when they're 35, and so they're watching this debate and they're going, "Oh, I never heard this argument before," because my church doesn't give me that side, So that's why I'm in favor of it.
So Ken Ham brings them in, but then they hear the logic and the intelligence of someone like Bill Nye articulate concepts. And they go, all right, well, that makes so much more sense, kind
Right.
of like.
There's a chance of catching a couple of them in the bunch.
Yeah,
But
just the
I think
fence sitters. You're never going to get the hardcore ones, and you just don't care that you're not going to get the hardcore ones.
And like, I'm sure you guys as well. Like, I've watched a lot of debates, religious debates, and it gets to the point where you know exactly what their argument's going to be. You know exactly how they're going to try and deviate from the actual question and get it into a realm of something else. There's a lot of backpedaling. It often starts from a God of intervention that can hear your prayers to a spiritual concept that we're all energy. And, it's like no matter what you do, they've got this plan lined out. It repeats, it mimics a formula almost.
Right.
The reason I picked this particular bit was because no matter what you do with his fans, with Kent Hovind's fan, no matter if you try to tell him that he's got bogus PhDs, no matter if you try to tell him that he's got a bogus argument, they always stick up for him. And they say it's not true, he's not a liar. With this segment, there is nobody on the face of the earth who can not say this is not a lie. Nobody can say that. It is obviously a lie. Even his best, people, those most ardent followers, have to admit that this is a lie. This is deceit.
But all
So
he has to
that's
do is
why
ask
I
for
picked that
forgiveness and he's
segment.
forgiven.
Oh, of course. It's funny, like they won't. One of the common arguments for not believing in evolution but believing in creationism is, well, we weren't there. You weren't there, so how can we know? And then, all right, well, if you use that same line of thinking, then really, how are we able to solve any murders that we weren't witness to?
Right.
Like, why do we have crime scenes? Why do we have investigations? Why do we get clues? And then based on that, we can definitively sometimes know what happened and persecute and punish the person. Well, we should always say, well, we weren't there. I mean, anything is possible. Well, no, because, we can gather clues, we can do research, we can build models, and we can put together what happened even after the fact when we weren't there.
Yeah, that'd be a good comedy sketch. Kent Ham, defense attorney.
Yeah, right? Yeah. We weren't there. Therefore, there's fingerprints. We weren't there. You know, it could have been anything. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. So that'll be the end of our show for today. But before we go, I want to make sure that we let everybody know Rohit's website, again, is flyingthroughspace.com. That'd be, of course, one word.com. And you said you also use Twitter. Do you want to promote your Twitter, or do you want to like?
Yeah, sure. My Twitter is Rohit Mohindra. If that's too much to spell, just the link I'm sure will be in the description, and then you can go to my website, and there's links for that on there. All my podcasts are on the website, and you can get pretty much everything. The website is the hub, and my SoundCloud, my Facebook page, and my YouTube is all there as well. So please go check out the site. Like I said, I'm all up for intellectual conversation. I don't want to get into something, well, you're an idiot. Educate me. I might be an idiot, but I don't want to be an idiot for any longer than I have to. So, let's talk about things. Maybe I am wrong, but to say you're an idiot, you don't know anything. Well, that doesn't educate me. Why don't you be the professor and let's have a discussion on something. So check out my stuff. Like I said, I cover a wide variety of topics. So I hope you find it interesting. And thanks you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the outro. What?
I was saying thank you, Rohit, for accepting our invitation.
Thanks. I'd love to do it in the future if you guys want to have me on.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll do that. So that's all for today. Please make sure that you subscribe to the Atheism TV channel. There you can watch the Infidel News for the Damned, where our talented team of writers and anchors present these and other stories not normally covered in the media. In the coming week, the Infidel will rerun today's stories and many more fascinating ones. You'll find Atheism TV at youtube.com/atheismtv. The Infidel Podcast of the Damned is a Nicole SD production. Nicole and I would like to recognize and say thank you to Truth Surge, who did the voiceover used in our intro and gave us permission to use music from his song Lied To as our opening theme. We'd also like to thank Rohit for participating in today's podcast. Nicole's channel is Nicole SD and can be found at youtube.com/NICOLSD. I am Gamut Man on YouTube, at Gamut Man on Twitter, and my blog and information on my books, including my nonfiction title, Believe It, You Know an Atheist, as well as my mystery novels featuring the atheist detective Lupa Schwartz, can be accessed at tinyurl.com/lupalanding. While there, you can sign up to receive my newsletter. Signing up also entitles you to choose one free ebook title from my collection of 99-cent novellas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.